The Washington Commanders fall to the Baltimore Ravens in their final preseason game 30-3. We're going to be talking about the key takeaways from today's loss, along with what Dan Quinn had to say after the game. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, just like Jaden Daniels is going to be hitting Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, Zach Ertz, and many others for multiple touchdowns this upcoming season. And so in exchange for hitting that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Washington Commanders. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Washington Commanders Insider family as we talk nothing but Washington Commanders football. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it, as we're going to start with the key takeaways, and then we'll talk about what Dan Quinn had to say after the game here. And so I think that the overall theme from this game was just that the Baltimore Ravens came in and they dominated in all phases here today. I think that that is exactly what you see if you have got a chance to watch this game, or you went back and rewatched it, just that the Ravens really dominated in all phases of the game here. And so let's start with just really the struggles defensively, I think, for the Washington Commanders. And so I think that when you go back and you look at this one, you will see a Baltimore Ravens team that was able to get chunk plays. I think that they were able to get large gains, and they were able to really establish a good tempo and really just stay on the field a lot longer than the Washington Commanders. In fact, when we look at the time of possession in this one, the Baltimore Ravens at 35 minutes and 44 seconds to the Washington Commanders 24 minutes and 16 seconds. And so you see that the Ravens were able to stay on the field much longer on their drives than the Washington Commanders. And it just seemed like every time it got down to third down, the defense just was not able to get off the field. In fact, when we look at the efficiency there, the Ravens 10 of 16, that's 62% on their third down efficiency, compared to the Washington Commanders, who were 7 of 14, which we're going to talk about the offense here in a moment. But, I think that those were definitely some of the struggles that we had here today. You also see that the Ravens got more plays in today than the Washington Commanders. And so slightly 62-58 there. So just more plays that the Ravens got on offense today. And so, I think that that is really the first key takeaway when we start to look at the defense and just looking at how the offense was really able to dominate for the Ravens. In fact, I believe in the first half, they were 2 of 2 when it came down to the red zone attempts. And so they were able to get both of those into the end zone and really capitalize off of that. And this is a Ravens team that did a lot of damage here in the first half, because it was 27-3 there at halftime. And so, just the Ravens, terrific job taking care of business there. The Commanders definitely struggled a bit there defensively to come off the field and just get some stops. And so I think that the next key takeaway out of this is now just shifting focus and just really looking at the offense for the Commanders. And so I think that we saw some great stuff here from Chris Rodriguez Jr. I thought that he was terrific with what he did once again, showing his vision. He showed his burst as well. He showed his power. And so he had 5 carries for 34 yards. And that was 6.8 a carry. He had the longest run of the day for the running backs at 12 today. And so I think that Chris Rodriguez Jr., I said this about a couple shows ago, maybe last show, that he has seriously put his name in the hat to perhaps be the lead back here for the Washington Commanders. We'll see what happens. Obviously, we still have 2 weeks to go until they get ready to play the season opener. And so let's see how practice continues to shake out. But I think that really over the last 2 weeks here, Chris Rodriguez Jr. has really been showing some things for us. And so he really stood out today. I think the next thing offensively for the Washington Commanders, staying with the positives, is I like what we saw from Luke McCaffrey today. I think that you saw the offense really go and just kind of be assertive when it came to trying to get Luke McCaffrey the ball today. And I think he capitalized for the most part because he had 5 targets today. He caught all 5 of those, 23 yards, 4.6 was his average, 11 was the longest. But what I liked about Luke McCaffrey is that you saw him just compete. Even though he was going down, you could see him still fighting for the yards and things like that. And that just made me think about what Dan Quinn had been saying about him as far as being a competitor, which we're going to talk about that in the post-game stuff that Dan Quinn said. But you saw that with Luke McCaffrey. And so it was good to see, especially after coming off a tough game. This last game maybe really hasn't popped the way that we thought he was going to throughout the preseason, but still you see the competitor in him. And Luke McCaffrey was a bright spot. I think another guy for us that really showed some stuff today was Ja'Cory Brooks. And so I think that Ja'Cory Brooks, he's had a bit of an up and down type of camp, but I think that when it came down to really game days, he's been a guy that has showed up, and I think that he showed up today. He was second in receptions with the 4 receptions for 24 yards. 8 was his longest. Did have 7 targets, 6 yards was the average, but still, I think that Ja'Cory Brooks definitely showed some signs today. And so I think that that was really a step in the right direction for him, hopefully making the roster. And so I think that those were some of the key bright spots today for us offensively. Now, as far as just really the struggles, I think for this team, once again, we start to talk about the turnovers. And I just think that the turnovers are something that the Washington Commanders are going to have to fix. This is something that really, when you look at last season, the way that things ended last season, it just had to be something that the Washington Commanders circled and said, look, we cannot do this. It's just not going to win you football games when you lose the turnover battle. And so 4-0 there. So the Commanders turned the football over 4 times today. And the Ravens were able to take advantage of that because they did get a pick 6, which was pretty terrible with that throw. And so Sam Hartman definitely struggled. One of his footballs that he threw, it got tipped and it was intercepted. But the one that went for the pick 6, I mean, that was just – it looked like the corner was literally sitting on the route. And I think he was trying to get to Ja'Cory Brooks, but it definitely shouldn't have gone there because, when you see that corner kind of sitting there, I think that he had a guy kind of going on that up route or whatever the case may be. So just that was just not a good decision on that interception. Then he also, too, had a fumble as well. And so that didn't help matters. And so, yeah, it was a very tough day for the offense with the turnovers and things like that. And so, this is something that still the Commanders are going to have to fix going into week number 1. And so the other thing about this, too, is just, I think that when we look at the fact that the Commanders didn't take advantage really of the red zone opportunity there, so they were 0-1 there, didn't like that. The third down efficiency's got to be better, so 7 of 14. And then there was one time where we turned it over on downs, and that was not a good thing there. So 1 of 2 on the 4th down efficiency. And so that's something that really, when you look at the way the team played last season, that was really like a money down. And so I get it. We didn't have the starters out there and things like that, but just really when you're looking at this thing from the principal standpoint and how the Washington Commanders just want to build off of good habits and things like that. So that's just not a good sign to see. And so those, I think, are some of the key takeaways from the game. You guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking as far as what your key takeaways were from the game. I'd love to hear those. And so now wanted to go ahead and shift focus here and start to talk about what Dan Quinn had to say after the game. And so Dan Quinn, I think one of the first things that he said was just being, a -4 and then having no takeaways and just really getting beat on all 3 phases is just not, just a recipe to be a very good football team. And so again, just paraphrasing this, he's asked about B-Rob. And he just says that, look, we knew that the running back position, that room was going to be a competitive room. And really, it was all about the opportunity. And so, it kind of talks a little bit about that situation when asked about the B-Rob situation. He does talk about Ali Cajo. And so a linebacker that I think that you did see that he was out there kind of fighting and working hard. I thought the physicality was there. He also talks about Hamilton again. And so Hamilton, he's a corner that we brought in pretty late here. And so I did see him out there in a ton of plays, kind of competing and stuff like that. Some more key takeaways that I just forgot to talk about that Dan Quinn actually did talk about in the postgame is that we did have some players that did return back from injury. And so Brandon Coleman, he got some reps, I believe. Also, too, Jordan McGee was back out there, and so he did make a couple tackles and things like that. So it was good to see that Jordan McGee was back out there, and Dan Quinn was super excited to see him back out there. He said that between him and Hamilton, those two really kind of caught his eye today. And he talked about Jordan McGee and just really being resilient and just how he's kind of worked hard to get back from the injury. And so it's good to see that. Also, too, we had Baptiste. He was back out there as well. And then also, too, Trey Amos was back out there, too. And so both of those, or actually all 4 of those players actually came back into action. And then Another thing, too, that they talked about in the post game is that Dan Quinn had mentioned that Noah Brown, in fact, did look pretty good in the pregame warmup. And so that was something that he was asked about. So it looks like that Noah Brown is trending in the right direction. And then Terry McLaurin, he was at the game today, didn't suit up or anything like that, but he was on the sideline. And so that is something to note. And then another thing that caught Dan Quinn's eye, he talked about Jeremy Reeves and just really how he was coaching people up and things like that before he even got to them or something like that. So again, talking about Jeremy Reeves, just how he's really stepped up as a leader, and now he's going to take on some more responsibility. This is a guy that certainly you can pencil him in for special teams, but they do want to get him out there into the back half of the defense on the safeties. And so let's see what happens if he gets his opportunities back there as a safety this year. And then he talked about Chris Rodriguez Jr. Or actually, I'm talking about Chris Rodriguez Jr. again with the good runs and things like that. And so really, I think that these were some of the key takeaways out of that. And lastly, Luke McCaffrey. And so he does say that Luke McCaffrey, with him, he's been impressed with just how he's been out there competing. He thought that even though he didn't get catches, I believe, in this last preseason game, he thought that you could really tell his presence was certainly felt on the special teams game as far as covering kicks and things like that. He said that his route precision, has gotten a lot better as well. And so just talking about Luke McCaffrey, who I think really did play pretty well today. So a strong game from him. And so anyway, that was the key takeaways from today's loss against the Baltimore Ravens. Once again, I just think that the Commanders just not a good showing, man, when it came down to it at the end of the day. And so anyway, it's over. We all go back to 0-0 now. The next thing that we're going to talk about is just really some of the players that we would like to see perhaps make the roster. We know that the roster is going to get cut down to 53. Then you do have your practice squad players, which I believe that is going to equal out to 70. So some tough decisions to come. We'll find out on Tuesday what that's going to look like. But I believe that next video coming up for you, we're going to talk about some players that I hope certainly make the roster. And so you guys let me know in the comments what your key takeaways were from today's loss to the Baltimore Ravens. And then also to let me know what you guys are thinking from what Dan Quinn had to say. As we always say, look, go Commanders, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.